Hi, everybody. Welcome to our first webinar of the year and our third webinar Satori. And thank you so much for your interest and for being so many in participating here with us today. And we are very excited about all the improvements that we are going to present today. And also, so here I'm here today with my colleague Armin. Some of you might already have met him. He is a scientific consultant in sport. My name is Elena. Nice to meet you for those I didn't talk to. I'm a sales consultant at NIRx here, and I'm joined also by my colleague Alina here that is gonna work in the background and make sure that everything is going to work correctly. But most importantly, here we are also joined by the main developers of Satori, Dr. Michael Lurs, that is going to give you a hint about the new improvements that we are going to introduce at OHBM 2023 this year. So just a brief considerations about the webinar. We are quite some people, so you're all going to be muted. Of course, if you have any questions, feel free to write it in the chat or to just use your hands and unmute yourself and ask the question. You can interrupt in any moment. The content will also be available on our website and of course also on our YouTube channel. If you have any further questions, you can send us an email at consulting or support@nirx.net. We received quite some questions. We will try to answer most of them or the most common, but of course we will follow up with all of you guys to answer all your questions. You can connect with us in more or less every platform. We are very social. And if you want to subscribe to our newsletter, you can click here on this link, or you can just image the QR code. So without further ado, I will give the mic to Michelle and enjoy the webinar.
Thank you very much, Elena, for the nice introduction. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another webinar about Satori. I will immediately start sharing my screen, and I hope you can see everything. Perfect. So basically in the last year, so it's now about 1 year that Satori was released, the first version. And since then, a lot of updates were coming in. And all of the updates that were happening throughout the last year are all documented within Satori, and you're welcome to check the release notes of these versions. Importantly, if you're now using Satori more regularly and you are publishing your data with a specific version, and there's an update in between, just check if the update includes any features that you need for your publication. And if not, you can always stick to the version that you're currently using and then update after you've done your work and your publication, basically. If you need an earlier version of Satori, just contact us, and then we can provide you with an earlier version of the software so that you can still do your analysis after 1 or 2 years with the respective version that you have done during your publication. Now, recently we have reached Satori 1.8. And with 1.8, there were some important features that were added. And I will guide you through these features in a hands-on, basically showing you all these steps in Satori. Therefore, I just jump right into Satori 1.8. So one of the features that we have started working on is mainly the general appearance of Satori. We got some nice feedback from you that some of the output of Satori that you are interested in is maybe not the one that you want to look at in this type of design. So, for example, one of the main effects is that Satori is starting in black mode, that you have all in a dark experience. So the thing that you can now easily see if you change from dark to the bright mode, I'll just do this so that you can see the effect. gives you some other way of looking into the data, especially if you want to create plots or if you want to just output your results. You just have a different view of these data sets. And I just reload the previous data so that you can see the effect. So now I basically see this data on a white background, for example. And this allows you now to basically also in the export of the data use these bright modes for the selection. And as you already know, if you want to change the color of the small views, you can just go here and select a color that more suits you to the respective needs over here. Really important to have this change happening. You really have to restart Satori every time, but usually you decide for one view and then stick to that on the long run. But now this is a coherent look for the bright mode and for the dark mode, just that you know and that you can use the dark or the bright option. Another thing that we have seen quite important is that you are able to resample your data. Resampling means that you're scanning your data set with a respective sampling frequency that you can see here on the right-hand side, for example, 10 Hertz. And now in Satori, you can just go to Tools, Resample fNIRS data, and then decide basically on the respective sampling frequency that you want. So here, as an example, I go to 5 Hertz. Then Satori creates a new data set, so it's not overwriting the old one, and it's called _resampled. So if I select the data set here and I look at the data set before, you can see that the general shape is the same, just that we have some data points that are in the resampling, of course, reduced. So if you want to apply this in general, you can also go to the workflow manager. The workflow manager in Satori allows you to perform different processing steps on a batch of data. And also in here, you have the tools which allow you to resample the data. And there you can set a new sampling frequency, in this case for the concentration data. If you need this for a different type, so for optical density or for a raw data, just let us know so that we can implement this one as well. Okay. Another thing that was added is that you can now easily mask channels from the interface. So you can just right click on a channel and then you see the option to mask a channel. And channel masking is a feature in Satori that allows you to see the effect of certain processing steps. So one example, if I run in the pre-processing, so analysis of fNIRS data pre-processing, if I run the channel rejection only, can go on advanced and see what this means. So for example, the scalp cut-in index or the CV. And I set a very, very, very strong threshold to show you the effect of this processing step. We're basically able to see directly how many of the channels, in this case, even no channels. So this is a very good data set. So let's reduce it even a bit more. So our getting started material is usually pretty good. So let's reduce it to 3, which is a very high value, but just for showcasing the effect. And now you can see that these channels are masked. And if you now disagree with this masking, you can also unmask the channel or even clear the whole mask of this design. If you agree that these channels should be removed, you can just completely remove these channels from the data set by clicking remove masked channels, and then a new data set will be created that doesn't include these specific channels. Okay. Then we have some more updates in the workflow manager, and I will shortly show you one of the biggest changes, which includes changes in the event manager. So the event manager, as you might already know from the main GUI, also exists in the workflow manager. And this event manager allows you to change specific conditions and specific items. And now you also have the possibility to add baseline and rest conditions and also rename certain conditions in your experiment. And this is important if you, for example, have a data set that includes a lot of different triggers. So in this data set, we only have 2, but just to showcase how this looks like. So go to the event manager. Here we only have 2 conditions, but if you, for example, want to rename all of these conditions in all the experiments that you have done, you can now just go into the event manager here and say rename condition number 1, rename condition number 1 to a certain name. And this allows you to much quicker rename all conditions within all data sets that you want into a certain name, which you can then use for a single study or multi-study GLM, because these are then directly transferred to these settings. Some of you might have heard about the FRESH study. It's a study where a lot of different sites are analyzing the same data set. And Satori can also be used to analyze this data. But there was one important aspect in this data set, that if you loaded the data set here into Satori, you might have seen that the optodes, so the channel positions here, were moved along. And also on the 3D view, you could see that the optodes were not registered correctly to the head. Now, with this update of Satori 1.8.2, you can go into the preferences here and go to data and enable the alignment of the 3D probe's position based on the landmark labels. And you can also say align the 2D probes based on the 3D nearest neighbor landmarks. Just enable this and load the data set again. And as you can see, the probes are now moved to the respective positions. And also the sources and detectors are now really on the spots where they basically belong. If you want to check how this co-registration worked, you can just go to your log, and there you see here a resulting co-registration matrix. So it's a phen transformation, which included different processing steps. Just have to take into account that this setting is a global setting. So if I now load a different data set, this transformation will also be applied. Usually it doesn't make too much of a difference, because if it's the same, if the co-registration is already in place, so for your already persisting data sets, the co-registration will just result in no difference. So you basically have only once on the diagonal, so no change in the reference. How is this co-registration done? It's basically based on the probe information, and in there you have landmark labels and landmark positions. And these are used to co-register the known landmark labels from Satori to the positions of the other data, of the loaded data set. So if you're analyzing this data set, there are just a few days left, but just take into account that you enable this setting so that you have the correct alignment of the data set. One of the additional parts that might be also of interest for this data set is that you can now in Satori open the save the event-related averages. Just remove this one here. Clear. Yes, and I add this one. So with this option, you are able to average the data of a specific data set. And you create event-related averages, which are exported as Excel files. And these Excel files you can then just load with Excel and plot the respective output yourself. It includes the average, so really the event-related average, plus the standard deviation of each time point. So you can export the mean, but also you can add a plot with the standard deviation for the input data that you provide. So it's for, let's say, for all this data set, you can then have a global event-related average output. Just to show you one of the processing steps that you can, for example, perform as a workflow, which you can also use to export later on. So this is an example how you could pre-process the fresh data. You can just save this information and keep it for later so that you can write in your processing what you have done, which step you had performed. So just saving this workflow allows you after 1 year or later to also verify which specific steps were performed and what was basically done to your data. Okay. Then there are some general improvements based on speed and the general processing of the data sets. And I can show you this in one of our exercise data, which Elena will mention as well. So the general speed of the processing of the statistics was improved. So I go here in the event manager and load the respective triggers. If I now run a GLM in this version of Satori, you'll see that the processing is now performed in a faster speed, and this also includes the speed for the multi-study GLM, which you can easily recognize when you open multi-study data or single study events. Okay. And one last thing that is now available, because a lot of people ask, how can I nicely export the data, the information of the probes? We added one feature in the 3D view tools that you can now also show the reference labels only from the respective layout. So if I click on layout, you can see that only the landmarks are shown that are used from the probes. With that, you get a bit more or an easy way to restructure your probes and basically to set up the probes in general. But you can, of course, switch back to the normal designs. But this layout gives you one more way to look at really these positions of the sources and detectors. Okay, with this, I would like to hand over to Elena, and she will introduce you to some features that are now available in the educational version.
Thank you. So I will now share my screen and I will start the software. So Michelle gave you a brief overview of the new features of Satori, and I would like to introduce you to the general concept of Satori. So Satori is thought for people that are new to fNIRS analysis or that would like to have their students to approach fNIRS analysis, and the Edu version is thought exactly for this reason. So the Edu version is a full Satori, let's say, software, but is license free. So the advantage is that you can share it with all the people you want. You can install it in all the laptops you would like. And also, the only limitation is that it's linked to predefined data sets. So for now, we have two data sets. One is the one for those of you that were at the Society for fNIRS conference in Boston, the one from the exercise. So it's basically a high density a montage for the finger tapping task, and the other one is a more standardized finger tapping task. So of course, we continuously are recording new data sets, and also there is the possibility if you want to start a for example, a class on fNIRS, or if you want to introduce a lab, you can just send us the data set that you would like to use for these classes, and we will upload it in the data set. Of course, there is the option to keep it private for just for your students, or to just share it, so that every time we download the software, or also other people download the software, we'll have this data set available. So the Edu has a getting started guide that will introduce you to the analysis of the software, just basically of the data set, sorry, just basically from the visualization of the data set and the montage, and to all the steps of the pre-processing so that you can get to the GLM results. So this is the getting started guide. There is also a PDF version, so you don't have to read it necessarily from the software. But when you download the software, also the data set will be downloaded. And if you go in the same folder, there is going to be also the PDF there. So here I can give you just a brief overview. There is basically a quick glance at all the steps that you will have to take in Satori, general introduction to Satori, where to find your data, and how to download it if it doesn't happen automatically, and basically how to check your updated version, and you should check that you have the latest version, and then you have a description of the task. This data set, so the one that I'm going to show you, has also physiological recording. So there was also wings recorded with this fNIRS data. And as you can see here, there is everything from the very basic to all the way to the analysis. So I will now start with the just opening the data, and basically I will give you just a brief idea of what you can do with the software. So you can see here that the software immediately shows you the montage. So you can see that like the bigger windows are just the long channels, and the smaller windows are the short channels. So here I had a 16 by 16 configuration with 8 short channels. And you can see here that the task is automatically recognized by the software. So we were sending triggers, and these were automatically loaded in the .NIRF file and recognized by Satori. So here you have left finger tapping and right finger tapping, really standard experimental paradigm. And the software immediately gave you also the event-related average. So you can see for condition 1 and condition 2. So those were the triggers that were sent, but that I will show you how to change the name for these conditions. And then you can only, let's say, look at one. So basically you can select just the task that you are interested in, and you have the mean and the standard deviation. So starting with the event, so you see here that all the triggering time is automatically saved. The duration is automatically put at 10 seconds, but it is possible to change it either individually or changing all the durations at once by clicking here. And then you can just edit the name and put left, for example, and right here. Then you can just apply to dataset. What Michelle showed before was a dataset without a protocol. So basically what happens is that you can save also this protocol, so that if you have different durations, for example, or different conditions, you don't have to change them every time. You can just save them and just load it subsequently during the rest of the analysis. So once I applied it to the dataset, I can just exit. Then I can quickly go to trim the data. So I will apply this just to the events in this case, so the fNIRS data. But otherwise, in this case, I also had a motion sensor, and as I said, the wings data. So I could also trim these two. So I will just use the standard, the default parameters for now, and of course. So basically what I'm doing is cutting 10 seconds before the first event and 20 seconds before, after the last event. And this is applied to all the channels in my montage. And then, so there are some basic pre-processing steps that the software suggests. And if you want to use the default parameters, you can just leave it as it is. Of course, you don't have to do all at once, but the advantage of Satori is that you can always compare all the steps in your preprocessing algorithm. So if you want to, for example, compare different types of motion correction or short channel regressions, there is the possibility to go to advanced and just untick all the other all the subsequent steps, and just take, for example, okay, I want to apply first one motion correction algorithm, then another one, and then you can just apply one step at a time and compare it afterwards, because the software never overwrites your data, but always saves a new .snr file with all the pre-processing steps saved in the name. So you will always be able to retrieve your regional data. So for now, I will just apply the standard the standard pre-processing algorithm, and we can just look at at the data. So you see that it's way more clear. And now I can just quickly go to the general linear model. Of course, I'm giving a really quick overview, but if you have any questions, we can always get in touch afterwards. So the GLM is really easy to apply. So here, when you go to oops, maybe I can show it again. You can go to analysis and general linear model, and then it automatically loads your tasks. So you can basically define your contrast here. You can, for example, go with left has more activation than baseline, right has more activation than baseline, and then right versus left. And of course, if you have more confounds, or you have additional regressors that you would like to add, you can do it here. And also there is a possibility to change your href function. So at this point, we can just go to Go and visualize. You can visualize your results with the simple t-test by double clicking on the channel that you want to look at. But it's also possible to do what Michelle was showing before, that is basically a 3D view. Look at the results on the 3D view. In this case, I have the results from all the three contrasts, but for example, if I just want to look at left, I have the activation for the left hand finger tapping, and for the right, and for right versus left. So the software already automatically corrects for multiple comparisons, and by default use FDR. But it's also possible to set the threshold manually and to apply the Bonferroni correction. And here you also have most of the most general information. As a general concept, you can also go to the folder where you have your data, and you will find also general Excel files and the TXT files with all the results from all the steps that you applied in the pre-processing. And this I will leave for later, because Armin will give you a overview. So I see that there is a question. Okay, so we have a question in the chat that is asking for hyperscanning studies, but so I think this I will leave Michelle to answer maybe later during the Q&A. So if there are no questions about the general overview of the edu, I will leave the mic to Armin.
Yeah, thanks, Elena. First, welcome all of you to the webinar. It's great to see so many interested people in Satori. And of course, I saw already some of you in support before, so that's great. Okay, yeah. It's quite weak, so I hope it gets a bit better. Okay.
Okay, just a second, because Armin internet connection is quite shaky. I'm sorry. So yes, basically what Armin will do is to answer some frequent questions that come up in support about Satori, and basically try to give you a general overview for this.
We can also continue with the next part and till this is fixed if you want.
Yes, maybe it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I will shortly jump in. So the QA we will then do at the end of the session. But in general, if you have questions about Satori, don't hesitate to shoot in an email to support. But also you find first information on support.nirx.de/Satori or .net/Satori. And this also includes videos and materials that you can just watch on specific topics. And there are many more on the websites. So just check them out. They are including really specific parts of the processing steps, and you can just get an idea of what is possible within the software. Okay, what is to come? So we're continuously developing the software, and after 1 year and so many updates, we are already looking forward to the next updates. And we have some exciting features for the next major version of Satori. And one of the things that we have worked on in the background is really a complete updated backend. This is nothing that you will directly experience. It's just that we try to be future-proof for the next years to come, and therefore we already updated now the backend after 1 year. This also includes some new features that we are now able to include, and this is one new data plotter, because we received also some general feedback that you want to combine different information of data, and this also goes into the way of the hyperscanning approach. So you want to basically combine in one view, in one plot, different results, different data, and this will be possible with the data plotter. Then we have some new workflow reports. So you could already see that the workflow gives you a lot of possibilities, but making this available in a standardized format that you can report it with your article is one of the things where we're working on. And we are starting with individual reports from your workflow that you can then easily store with your data. We have so many new features and so many new things that now it is important that we have shortcuts and hotkeys that you can easily go between options and menus. So this will make your life much easier when you work on a regular basis with the software. And one of the most exciting features that we will include is that Satori becomes extensible by you. And what this means, I will go through in the next couple of slides. We have some major speed improvements, and this you will experience right away when you start the software. We have, in some cases, with data sets that we haven't seen before, that we don't know, some things that might not work. Satori might have crashed, and in these cases, we don't know what is basically going on. So now we have a self-detected failure reports, meaning that we want you to contact us as soon as we realize that there is something not working with the information that we need to improve the software. So if you experience a problem, we want to make it easy for you to contact us with the specific information that we need to improve the software. So if something is wrong, always reach out to us. And if you can replicate the problem, it's even better, because then we can easily, or hopefully easily, fix the problem. Then we have a new way to record your processing steps. And this is a quite cool feature, since it will really give you step-by-step approach where you can easily note down what you have done to your data set from the GUI. And I will come to this in a second. So how is this all possible? Mainly what we will include into Satori is Python. And this allows us to extend the features of Satori dramatically. And one of the biggest feature that you can do if Python is included into Satori is that you can extend the software yourself. You can write your own code, you can execute your own code, and you can use the functions from Satori in your own way and in your own style. And this is a big step for us, but also not a necessity for you to be able to program, because that's something, one of the unique features of Satori, that you can use it without having to program a line of code. And this we want to continue with the integration of Python. And one example, or some examples that Satori will include, is that the ability to code within the software is great. So you can just execute scripts or develop your own. So we will share with Satori then certified scripts where you know, okay, these are performing the same steps as you know from the GUI, but they are just easily accessible through the scripts menu. And you can, of course, extend then the software with scripts or plugins. Now, the difference between a script and a plugin is basically that the plugin can extend Satori with, for example, changes in the interface, and the script is something that you can run in Satori, which just executes specific processing steps, loading data, and so on. So even able to extend really features into the software, which are not yet available. And with this, we also start the integration of notebooks into Satori. And some of you might have worked with Jupyter notebooks for a while already. And we are now introducing with the 2.0 also Satori notebooks. And I will show you on the next slides how this looks like. One additional feature, and this is where the importance of not the need that you can program, Satori will automatically write Python code from the interactions with the GUI. And this is a feature which allows you to log the information that you have done, but it also gives you the ability to recreate the datasets that you have worked with. So this is an example how the notebooks look like in Satori. So they are really similar to the notebooks that you know from Jupyter, for example. So you have different items that you can add into the notebook. You can edit, for example, here the text, but you can also include into the text source code, and the source code can then include, in addition, also specific calls which can embed specific screenshots from the app directly. So here, if you, for example, open a dataset, you can also show this dataset in the embedded view and then have a screenshot of the dataset that you've loaded. This will be also available for the 3D views and in the future also as interactive windows. If you double click into one of these items, you will basically have the editing mode enabled. So you can directly write Markdown text into these fields. And if you have a double click within the source code lines, you can directly change the scripts and adapt them accordingly. And each of these fields you can run individually, or you can run the whole process at once. Now, there are a lot of more things that we will integrate and that we will basically make available to you so that you can see what the big advantage of these tools is on the long run. But we would like to invite you to see more of this at the HBM 2023. And of course, if you're curious, if you have any questions about the Python interfaces and what's up to come, just shoot us an email so that we can already discuss with you in the current state. And with this, I hope that Armin's internet connection is now working again. So we will go directly into the questions.
Thanks, Michael, and sorry for the technical difficulties, but I hope we can get it done now. So let me share my screen. Thank you all for joining, obviously. So the point is, we had many wonderful questions, and due to time reasons, we cannot go into all of them. And they also range from very minute or specific to very broad. So that means possibly we cannot go into the very broad ones, but we can go into one of the minuscule to medium questions, I would say. The point would be, whatever we cannot answer today, we can promise to get back to you via email, or we can set up Zoom sessions to look into some of your data sets or to show you a little more hands-on things in Satori if you like to. So just get in touch with the support and then we can arrange this. obviously, some of the questions have already been answered by the nice presentation of Elena and by Michael's presentation. So you already had a quick look at Satori. Some of you already tested it themselves, the Edo version or the trial version. So I would like to focus on a couple of things we also encountered in support multiple times. So I think we have now a good overview of what people encountered as problems or mentally represent as limitations, and I would like to delve into those. And this is mostly, position number one. Of course, independent from bad data, we cannot change this, obviously, but of course, we have many questions regarding the exported data formats from Satori. So what is Satori able to export and how is it formatted? What's the meaning of the formatting of the data? How can you read the data? And I would like to quickly share, not with you Satori, because you see this already, but I would like to show you a document I've recently created, because this is something I can just send you via email. It's just called Satori data formats. And if you're interested in any existing data format that you can import or export from Satori, mostly export formats, you can check this. For instance, if you would be interested in how are the event-related average data formats that you can export. So basically the time courses that are averaged from your channels, how are those structured in those Excel files that you, or CSV files that you can export? How is it working out? You go into this document, you check event-related averages, and then you go into the corresponding setup. And you see here, for instance, you see event-related averages. There's an export menu that Michael maybe showed you already, export ERA data. And then here you create a CSV file. And in this document here, the specific setup of this file is explained, what each column, what each row means. So that hopefully explains how you can read all those data and can use the data for external validation or for external statistics with those data sets and so forth. So let's say this bridges the gap between the data that you can actually export and any additional analysis that you would like to do, because I think one of the major strengths of Satori is, besides a very easy learning curve and very easy access into all your analysis, is also that you have a very open pipeline inside and out, so you can easily access all your data at every level, all your results at every level, and then you can either now wait for the Python version to come up to do some more statistics and some more processing steps. But even now you could go into the data and run statistics yourself with any available tool that you can manage, like could be SPSS or JASP, but could be also something like even Excel, whatever you want to make use of, or R, you can use as soon as you understand the formatting of the data. So this is one of the other available questions here, for instance. So I will not jump into every point now, just to give an overview. For instance, let's say you're interested in the ANOVA here. That's an excellent question. I encountered multiple times. So right now the point would be an analysis of variance is at the current moment not yet possible in Satori. So you can do a multi-subject GLM analysis, but ANOVA would be in the moment beyond the scope, because you also have to understand Satori. Although it's quite powerful, it's still quite new. Although it's updated frequently, but ANOVA is not yet included. But if you know how your data is stored, for instance, the beta values from the GLM, which we can explain you can very easily take all the data and run your ANOVA externally, for instance, in SPSS or JASP or any tool that you might want to use. And then you can also import it back into Satori. So there's an open import into the contrast map files in ANOVA, which is very easy and also explained in a document. So if you would like to know more about this, there's a multi-study GLM guide here, and there's also an external statistics guide, which I called Extending Satori Statistics here. And here you can actually see when you want to run your analysis, you get these CSV files. So this would be a CSV file based on multi-subject analysis of 10 subjects. And you would now like to know what do these columns mean? How do I make use of this data? It's also one of the questions. You can just take it as is. You can reformat it slightly here, explain the format a bit. And then you can, here in this example, I use the beta values from this Excel file. I loaded into JASP, which is an excellent treeware statistics tool. Here I ran my ANOVA, as you can see here. So here you have the channel information. I added a group factor just to see if it's going. It's like a feasibility test. And then I basically ran the ANOVA and exported the results and then imported it back into Satori. And then I got my fMaps in Satori, even though Satori at the moment doesn't run the ANOVA, but there's such an easy access to the results and the data that you can do a lot of things. So if you're interested in data, like myself, for instance, so it's super easy, but in the future it will become even more easy. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. let's see, connectivity analysis. This is also one more of the broader questions. Of course, there's not just one type of connectivity analysis. There's a whole bunch of tools, and everybody has a different label about this. So what do you mean by this? More or less simple correlation analysis? Do you mean like a frequency analysis, Granger causality mapping, DCM, whatever? So that means in the moment there is no specific connectivity tool in Satori besides seed-based correlation, which you can easily run in the right mouse context, mouse button menu. But in the future, with the Python integration and other steps that will come this year, this will become much more easy. Mixed model designs, yeah, I would say have the same answer here. So this will come with the upcoming versions and also link to other tools. Let's go to the third page here. So the multi-subject GLM analysis in Satori, we have a document for this. It's nearly as easy as what Elena just showed you. So basically, in her example, she obviously used the single study GLM dialog here. For this multi-study, would have this slightly different dialog here, multi-study GLM, and the only thing you have to do is add all the runs of the analysis you would like to include. So you add more of these fNIRS files that are pre-processed, and as soon as all the data sets are added, you can just run your analysis, and the results that you get will be slightly more complex, but also can be exported to these Excel files I showed you, CSV files, and you can also analyze them beyond that. But it's fairly simple, but stops at this point at the at a random effects level without being able to separate groups. Let's go back. Physiological data. In the moment, the physiological data is, of course, might be included in your SNRF data set, like the WINGS data that Elena just pointed out. So you might have the data, but as of yet, this is in the works. So there is concerned effort to allow you a fairly easy and valid combined analysis of these physiological data with your fNIRS data, but it's not yet fully integrated, but will come up as potentially as a kind of a script in Python. But Michael can say more about this, but in the moment, it's in the way of being created. So multiple very clever people work on this, and I'm quite confident that this will come out quite easy. So if you now look into the data, what you will potentially see is that your SNRF data contains this all this data, but you will not be able to make easy use of it. So when you open the data, you will notice there is physiological data, there is I don't know, there's heart rate and PPG and so forth, SpO2 included, but because of differences like in the measurement frequency and other complex things, you cannot just easily edit as a GLM regressor. It has to be prepared for the analysis in a very specific way. And we're working on this right now to make it for you as easy as possible and as valid as possible to use it right away. The combination of Satori with other fNIRS analysis tools is also super interesting. We cannot go into very depth now because of time reasons, but in principle, of course, you could think about first specifying at what kind of pipeline would you like to build. So is it that you would like to use Satori for pre-processing and another tool for analysis, or the other way around? Depending on this, of course, there are different options, but I think as long as your other software can make use of the SNRF files that Satori exports or creates, you're good to go. But of course, it really depends on the details what you want to do. So I would, for these kind of questions, advise to get in touch with us, send us a support email, and we set up a meeting and we discuss all the details and try to give you the best advice how to proceed there. Let's see. Yeah, I'm sorry, I really jumped over many of these questions, but we would really advise to get back for the very detailed questions, get in touch with us. So for instance, the advice regarding pre-processing versus GLM regressors, that's also a super interesting question, because let's say regarding the short channels, you could, as it is right now, as a default, use them in pre-processing, as Michael and Elena has shown you, but you could also not use it there, but do it then in the GLM as a additional set of confound regressors or covariates. That's, I would say, an empirical and scientific question, which is not uninteresting, but I have no specific direct advice for you, because I would say it depends a bit on what you want to do and what you think is superior. I think there are pros and cons for both approaches. For instance, running it within the pre-processing is a proven valid approach, and you can immediately see that it helps your data quality, but doing it at the GLM side will give you a bit more flexibility maybe and allow you other analysis options that you might not have if you do it immediately in the pre-processing. But it really depends on the details. So please get in touch with us if you want to see some details. Very good point for Satori is it has an excellent outlook on data quality. So if you just want to learn your data, which is for me the most important point, that you understand your data, this is an excellent tool to show you what are potential problems in your data. So again, sorry for being a bit persistent here, but if you want to learn about your data, we have a document which is allowing you to inspect your data quality. And I try to come up with all the tools in Satori right now. More will come to look at the quality of your data, like anti-correlation, looking at the frequency spectrum. So as for instance, the frequency of your relevant channels overlapping with the frequency of your design. So is there a chance that your data is actually of a good quality? Or if you look at anti-correlation, is there actually a higher level of noise than expected? These tools will show you this. And via this, you could, I mean, even if you just use Satori for the quality management or quality evaluation and then do your analysis later on, you have already gained a lot of power in your analysis and made life much simpler, I would say. So I would advise these documents, so please get in touch with us because they answer a lot of those questions actually, so save a lot of time. So yeah, looking at the time, maybe there's something else from the chat. Yeah, the how to apply batch processing. For instance, to a group of 30 or more subjects, I think Michael has quickly pointed out, but some of you joined later. So there is a workflow manager, which you can easily open up with this icon here. And then you can use this simple drag and drop approach to use the elements on the left side in this toolbox here, drop them into the workplace, connect them with this nice green lines here to allow you to create in a visual way, like a pipeline of processing steps. And then you can just load all your 30 or more subjects in here, run the pre-processing or processing steps, and don't forget to save your data in the end. And this will automatically create all the data sets that you want and pre-process them in the way you want. And you don't have to point and click. This is also excellent if you, just a simple example, which I always like, let's say you like SCI channel rejection, but you don't want to do it in every data set, or you want to test it separately. You could build a pipeline to do the SCI-based channel rejection, then inspect the results, like look at these parameters, how low does the SCI get, and you don't have to click through every data set to reach this goal, but just build this pipeline. This is like can be stored as a flow file and can also be sent to colleagues so they can replicate your steps and so forth. Okie dokie. So I hand over to my colleagues because I don't want to take too much of your time unless there's another question. But again, if you have any remaining question I didn't tackle, just send us an email to support, and then we can get in direct touch and answer your question more specifically. Thank you.
So I believe that if there are no more questions, then we can thank you all again for participating in the webinar, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.